What's going on, everybody? This is Tyler with Fight Talk, formerly Rapid MMA, and I got a small announcement to make. And don't worry if you don't want to listen to this. I'll put timestamps down below, so just scroll down, skip ahead, and we're all good. I do encourage you listening, though. In my last video, I said, I'm back. That was my comeback video. I was excited to start making new content and rebuilding what I once had. It's still pretty strong, but I want to get it back to the level that it was. But unfortunately, life has punched me directly in the mouth and I'm knocked down and I'm trying to get back up right now, and I have no idea when I'll be back, if I'll be back at all. I have no time frame and I don't know what's going to happen in the immediate future. So this video is not finished. I've been working really hard on it, but I just had to stop. And if as far as new content, there probably won't be any for a while, and that really hurts me to say, but it's just kind of the nature of life and how things go. That brings me to my next thing, which is thank you everyone who has subscribed and watched this channel and all the videos over the past couple years. It has grown so fast. I went from 0 to like 1,000 to 6,000 in the matter of no time, and a lot of that had to do with my videos about Conor McGregor, but also Ronda Rousey and Rose Namajunas, so some of the bigger stars. But you guys subscribed and you kept watching all the videos, and I think I had one of the more healthy communities on YouTube than a lot of other channels. I mean, I subscribe to a lot of channels and a lot of them wouldn't be as positive, or some of the videos didn't have as many likes, but any debate wasn't that crazy. There were healthy debates in my comment section. Some of them were a little bit nuts, but I mean, everybody has that. But overall, it was awesome, and I thank you guys for subscribing and watching these videos. It was a lot of fun. It makes the fights way more fun when you can talk about it and read what everyone's thoughts are. And then when you have a video with a lot of views, they're all hinging on what you said, your decision and your pick, and that just adds that level of excitement. And that was a lot of fun to do. But I really want to do it, but I just can't right now, guys, and it just sucks. So with that out of the way, let's get to talking about Khabib versus Conor. I apologize in advance for all the editing and maybe the off-the-cuff talking, but I just didn't have any time to complete this, so here it is. There's so much to unpack with this fight. UFC 227, Saturday, October 6th. We are finally, hopefully, presumably, getting a much anticipated fight between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor. This is the perfect fight because of the personalities, the talent, the popularity, and mainstream crossover. But even better is the very simple fact that it's a classic MMA fight. An accomplished striker and dominant wrestler square off. It's simple, yet it's complicated. Unfortunately, everything I'm about to say has likely already been said. It's pretty obvious to many, but how can we not talk about it? So let's dive in. This is Fight Talk with Tyler. Let's start with a video I had done after UFC 205 when Khabib fought Michael Johnson and Eddie Alvarez fell to McGregor. In my video, I stated that despite Khabib's dominant wrestling, I felt he didn't look unbeatable in that fight. Khabib's decision to stand in trade with Michael Johnson was a risky one and went against his coaches and corners' wishes. Khabib still won that fight and he did dominate, but he seemed vulnerable, and his decision to stand, it seemed like an emotional one. Of course, fans and spectators alike have exaggerated the effectiveness of Michael Johnson's stand-up in that fight, and Khabib was never really in major danger. However, he showed some kinks in the armor and some questionable decisions, and this isn't the first time he's done this either. A couple of other examples that come to mind are his fight with Pat Healy and more recently Al Iaquinta, and that's why I made that video. I felt Khabib would lose against McGregor if he fought him like how he did Michael Johnson, which leads me to a recent Q&A with Khabib Nurmagomedov.
He have only very good left hand. I agree with this. He have very good left hand. It's gonna be different fight. People think, okay, if Khabib gonna fight like I fight versus Iaquinta, okay, he can beat me. But you have to watch all my fights. All my 10 fights, it's all different. When I fight with Barboza, Dos Anjos, or like Michael Johnson, all fights is different, you know, and we will see.
Khabib makes a great point, and I like that he acknowledges many of our thoughts. If he fights Conor like he did Michael Johnson or Al Iaquinta, it's reasonable to assume that he could be taking a big risk trading with Conor. So what I was originally going to do in this section was take a couple of video clips from the fights with Michael Johnson, Iaquinta, Pat Healy, and see what they show us. But unfortunately, I can't do that, so I'm going to kind of just ramble here, and hopefully I can think of all the things that I had in mind before, because I don't even have my notes right now that I had. So let's just kind of assume that we're listening to some sort of just off-the-cuff podcast. There's one thing in Khabib's fights that just come to mind, and that's his decision-making. Now, he's very dominant. We know these things. I'm not going to really harp on that too much, but there's one consistent theme is that he doesn't really listen to his corner, and he has cornermen who speak Russian, obviously, but a consistent theme, even from the beginning of his career in the UFC, is that he decides to stand and trade with these guys. Now, luckily, a lot of the guys are just more wrestler boxers and not that dangerous on the feet. So Khabib's never really had that much trouble, and when he does get in trouble, he generally is able to just like erratically close the distance and take his opponents down. Now, that's gotten more refined over the years, but I mean, even against Iaquinta, Khabib would like charge in and do a flying double switch knee and try to take his guy down. That's just not really going to fly with somebody like Conor, I don't think. Those erratic decisions that he does in some of these fights, they still show up from the last fight with Iaquinta to his first fight, one of his first fights with Pat Healy. And then obviously we see shades of the things that he did in Michael Johnson. And then I think Daryl Horcher was another one. And most notably, Rafael Dos Anjos was just probably the most important fight to watch. Khabib's fight with RDA is very interesting. Now, Khabib did really good against Edson Barboza also, both really fantastic strikers, but the closest one you're going to see is probably RDA because he is a southpaw and he relies a little bit more on his hands than Edson Barboza. Barboza was an easier fight for Khabib just because you close that kicking range. Barboza doesn't really have a lot to work with, so he was just dominated against the fence and then taken down, and I just think that was a little bit obvious. But against RDA, that was a more interesting matchup because RDA usually plants his feet and then will throw a left too, but he's much more Muay Thai style than Conor. He throws more inside kicks and leg kicks, and he doesn't have the power in his hands that Conor does. So that's probably the best insight that you'll get, and you'll notice in that fight that Khabib Nurmagomedov does get backed up against the cage. He doesn't always take the center of the octagon, and he also, even in that fight, he decided that maybe it'd be a good idea to try to trade blows with RDA, and at the end, he still took him down and dominated him. But those are consistent patterns, and I understand what Khabib's saying. He comes out with a different game plan depending on the fighter. However, the patterns that come up in each fight are pretty consistent. Sometimes just against the orders of his coaches and probably against the game plan they originally had. He decides to go out and try to strike with some of these guys and dangerous guys. Michael Johnson's a good fight to look at too, but Michael Johnson has really bad technique, and he really was panicking in that fight, it seemed. He was throwing his left really fast, but I mean, it was calculated, and he would always lift his back foot off the ground. I mean, he had no composure. So I feel like RDA is a better representation of somebody who likes to pressure, who uses their hands more, and is still a southpaw. So if you guys are at all curious about how I kind of see this fight going, I would go ahead and take a look at that RDA fight. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that Khabib can't stand and trade with Conor. I mean, he certainly can. He keeps his hands up sometimes. I mean, he keeps his right hand usually stapled to his chin, depending on who he's fighting. But he doesn't have the best angles. He does when he's inside and he's clinching and he's wrestling, but as far as his outside work, if he wants to close the distance to take somebody down, I mean, sometimes it's just a bull rush, sometimes it's a level change and then a bull rush, and then other times he might just go far outside heel and ankle pick or try to grab the heel of his opponent. So it's really tough for me to imagine him erratically going in and Conor McGregor being so terrified of the takedown that he doesn't throw punches. I mean, even injured, And even with a bad cardio, Conor McGregor still took the center of the octagon against Chad Mendes, and he stood his ground, and he looked for those openings despite knowing that Chad Mendes would take him down. Now, remember, he didn't even train wrestling for that camp, and that doesn't mean that Conor suddenly is going to be some grappling expert by the time he fights Khabib. However, I do think that he'll be confident in his ability to touch Khabib when he tries to close the distance. As long as Conor doesn't read too far into those level changes and panic about the shot coming in, I think he'll be just fine in landing shots on Khabib. That being said, Khabib is very erratic, and you don't know if he's going to level change and throw punches. So we do know that Khabib is obviously a big guy, and he throws with power. It's just whether or not he's going to find that opening and, drop and finish Conor McGregor, which is a possibility. I think in all likelihood, it's a grind out stoppage or submission within the second or third round, or, a blowout in the fourth or the fifth or something like that. But I think all signs kind of point to Khabib winning by something against the cage rather than out on the feet. Now, as far as Conor is concerned, we know he had the fight with Floyd Mayweather, and he made a lot of money, and he's been out of the game for a couple of years as far as MMA, and that does pose some issues. Now, I don't know so much that ring rust or cage rust would get into that scenario. I mean, it can, but I think it's more has to do with his motivation. And I think that is a fair point to make. Conor is generally a very motivated guy, and he's unique in that aspect. But even listening to some interviews after the Floyd fight, he's done a lot. He's done a lot of media appearances. There was one in particular where he did mention it's sometimes it's tough. To get up when you have everything and you're able to do what you want to. He's sitting on a pile of cash, and he's kind of looking at different investments in business or fashion, things of that nature, trying to make big fights too, maybe in boxing. But he admitted sometimes it's a little bit more it's more difficult now. That could play a factor. I mean, he win or lose, this fight's going to be massive. It's a big fight for the UFC. Is it going to be as big as the Floyd Mayweather fight? Probably not, but you know that he's getting paid well, and you know that it's going to be something worth his while. It's just, does he have the same motivation that he did before he made it big, when he was hungry, when he was looking for those two titles? I think it's safe to say probably not. He holds the reach advantage in this fight. His frame might be a little bit smaller than Khabib's, but Conor's built very weird. He has long arms for his body type. So it's just interesting. Southpaw, I know Khabib has fought a couple Southpaws, and I mean, they're just not quite what Conor is. So I guess we can kind of just dive into my general idea of how this fight goes. I'm picking Conor in this fight, and I'm actually kind of surprised to see some pundits and fighters picking Conor in this one too. I felt that way before heading into the fight with Eddie Alvarez, and Eddie Alvarez shit the bed in that fight, guys. Damn, he froze up in that fight, and Conor made it look easy. Who knows if that's something that's going to happen in this fight too? Honestly, you just never know. But the reason I'm leaning towards Conor is because I noticed that Khabib does give up the pressure sometimes, and he works against the cage rather than having his opponent against the cage. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't happen. I understand all the outcomes of this, but Conor is a pressure fighter, and he will stand in the center of the octagon, and he'll throw shit. He'll throw shit, and he'll see what sticks. But at the end of the day, he's looking for that step back left hand. And if he's pressuring Khabib round after round, or within the first two rounds, if he's pressuring Khabib and Khabib's looking to make a move and close that distance with whatever the hell tactic he's going to try to do, I think he gets clipped. And now a big overstatement that people say about Conor is that, he touches people and they get knocked out. Now, that's obviously not true. It's usually accumulation, and they're usually TKO'd. And the only exception to that really is Jose Aldo. And we all know that. But when he punches people, does it change the course of the fight? Yeah, it does sometimes. It might take a few rounds, but it does sometimes. And we saw him against Floyd with the boxing gloves too. And, he didn't put him away. So we just don't, it's sometimes just over exaggerated that he's just got this one punch knockout power, quote unquote, Joe Rogan, which we are going to hear nonstop, and I'm not excited about that. But, you know, it's not one punch knockout power. He has the capabilities that can happen in this fight, but I think it's been proven that it's accumulation of damage that will put Khabib away. And I think just how susceptible Khabib is on the feet, and if he gets pressured or if he gets out angled on the feet, he's gonna get TKO'd. At the very least, he's going to get dropped a few times. I just don't know what his durability is. I know Nate Diaz is a proven durable fighter. I don't know about Khabib. He does get tagged here and there. And, against Michael Johnson, he did seem a little bit wobbled. Didn't seem in any sort of immediate danger. But, I mean, there's the proof in the pudding. Now, as far as Khabib winning, yeah, absolutely. He can just kind of bull rush his way in and take down Conor, grind him out, get that cardio down, and then that would be the fight. But we also have to remember that Khabib doesn't get all of his takedowns all the time either, and he doesn't just maul his opponents once he gets them down there. Has he done that? Yeah, for sure. But he doesn't always get every single takedown. We saw RDA stuff some of those takedowns too, and Gleison Tibau's a great example as well, how he stuffed a lot of the takedowns. So I just think it's important to not over exaggerate any one element of this fight. There's present flaws and there's present advantages, but they shouldn't be blown out of distortion just because a bunch of casual fans have an opinion on social media. There's a little bit of context with everything, but I just think maybe within 1 or 2 rounds, Conor McGregor can absolutely get this done. I just think what Khabib's habits are there, and I wonder what happens when he panics, when he does start getting hit and he can't close the distance. The Eddie Alvarez fight and a little bit of the Chad Mendes fight just keeps popping into my head. This 2-year layoff is a big asterisk, and the money is a big asterisk, but that's my choice and that's my pick. That's the way I'm leaning, and I went back and forth on that one violently, but that's really about it. You guys, I'm so sorry for the format of this video. It's long. I usually cut it down and trim the fat, but that's all I've got. This is all I have time for. I love you guys. Thank you so much for subscribing. I hope to see you soon. I'm Tyler. This is Fight Talk. Enjoy the fights.